Hello, welcome to Gagro.net. My name is Wally Sarkisian. And today we have a special guest, the Executive Director of ANC, Western Region. And you all know ANC is one of the best organization in diaspora. And they are everywhere in the world, like it's just, they used to say the British Isle is sun never set. That's how ANC is. So we have today Sarkis, and he's again executive director, and of course he also was at one time involved in Armenia, resettling Syrian refugees. Maybe he could talk about that a little bit too. And so let's go. Sarkis, welcome.
Thank you, Wally. Thank you for the invitation.
So let's start. This one is, there's so much we could talk. This one here is the most ridiculous from the U.S. State Department. I'm sure you've seen it. Here is this guy, Matthew Miller. He says, adorable, dignified peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan. You've seen in Twitter, and I said, where is the dignification in this? You're sending 120,000 men, women, children to Azerbaijani slaughterhouse. You call it dignified? Your thought on this?
Yeah. Well, thank you for the question. It's an extremely important topic to discuss. Unfortunately, as we have seen over the past, I would say, since the signing of the trilateral statement between Russia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan at the conclusion of the 44-day war in 2020, and especially since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it seems like the European Union-led efforts, the U.S. State Department-led efforts towards quote-unquote regional peace have essentially used an even-handed approach towards Armenia, Artsakh on one side, and then Azerbaijan on the other side, as if the U.S. State Department and the Biden administration doesn't have the intelligence information that all of us see every day from the ground as Armenians, witness the constant threats that Aliyev poses to the 120,000 Armenians that have been under a blockade since December 2022, more than almost 6 months now. And the constant invasion and occupation of the sovereign territory of the Republic of Armenia, which initially started in May 2021. So unfortunately, you are 100% accurate. There is nothing dignified in the manner of negotiations that are ongoing between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Armenia, as you are aware, from a position of weakness, obviously, is being forced by Azerbaijan through the use of force, which is illegal in nature, through an ongoing occupation of its sovereign territories and an undermining of its territorial integrity, to essentially settle for agreements that don't stem from the national interests of the Armenian people. So what you just mentioned is just one of many examples, including statements that the Secretary of State Blinken, even USAID Administrator Samantha Power, who was the author of the famous book, as many Armenians know, A Problem from Hell, America in the Age of Genocide. Well, guess what? Samantha Power and the Biden administration are essentially overseeing a new potential Armenian genocide, or at the very least ethnic cleansing in Artsakh today.
Yeah.
And they're not doing anything.
Yeah, official after official, this is, and U.S. ambassador in Armenia, like, is so much involved every day, going to institutions and pushing this propaganda. It's just amazing. You know, I'm so frustrated with Armenian media. Of course, most of them are Pashinyan puppets. Like, they never, this is 2 years. This man spent millions of dollars every week. He takes his wife and children, goes supposedly negotiate. I just want one journalist to ask this idiot, what have you brought to Armenia or for Armenian sake? 2 years. All you come is with more concession, more concession. You know, like, who are those journalists in Armenia? Do you know? Because you live there.
Yes, I would say that there is a huge problem with Armenian media, especially in the Republic of Armenia, but this is not something new, really. Armenian media has often been, more of a propaganda and PR tool for different governments throughout the years rather than actual source of information. In fact, I would even argue that many media institutions in Armenia are essentially, unfortunately, clickbait institutions where they use grandiose headlines to get people to click on them, to look at the article or the contents of the material that they're trying to disseminate. But in reality, there is essentially, it's more like rumor or tabloid level news practice in media. So unfortunately, that is something within Armenia. I would say maybe there are like 5 or 6 somewhat credible media outlets. But I guess from a freedom of speech standpoint and freedom of media standpoint, the reality is many international organizations who compare, for example, Armenia's media freedom versus obviously the tyrannical regime in Azerbaijan, which is a dictatorship, and the entire media is controlled by the dictatorship of Aliyev, actually give fairly high grades to Armenian media. But I would generally, agree with you in the sense that Armenian media unfortunately fails to do in-depth reporting. There's 1 or 2 news agencies, especially HEDK, who do more investigative type of research and do provide extremely important information to the public. But those are very few and no, HEDK.
Oh.
HEDK. But those are, again, I agree that unfortunately Armenian media in general, in Armenia especially, is lacking in many ways.
Yeah, because today U.S. ambassador was visiting one of Armenian newspaper, was just bragging about and all that stuff, so in propaganda things, like, okay, so it's so bizarre.
In that regard, we have to also contextualize comparing Armenia to, for example, Azerbaijan. We have to also admit that comparing Armenia to Azerbaijan, there's really no comparison right there.
Yeah, but
Azerbaijan is a dictatorship, state-run media compared to Armenia, where essentially there is free media. It's just a bad quality free media.
But that's still 5 years this guy is in. When he stayed like as long as which I expect Aliyev, you'll see lots of media in jail already. He's throwing some in jail anyway. Now, I'm gonna just run this.
Not just journalists, but I mean, by the way, many years ago, I used to work for also Human Rights Watch, specifically in their Middle East and North Africa division. In fact, Azerbaijan, up until the 2020 conflict, had banned Human Rights Watch, which is one of the biggest international human rights organizations. Azerbaijan had banned Human Rights Watch from traveling to, or Aliyev had banned them from traveling to Azerbaijan. So, I mean, the comparison is really not a comparison at all in that regard. But please go ahead.
But it's gonna get there. Trust me. That's how those dictatorship works. It takes time. I'm just gonna run this video. It was so bizarre. Even like Grey Wolf, that what is that? MHP, where they call the political party which is some countries even they're banning it. I don't know, Germany or something.
And yeah, several European countries.
Gray wolf, right?
Gray wolves, yes.
Yeah, and their leader is supporting Pashinyan. It's just it's just mind-boggling how this Turk got this guy. It's just amazing. Like here is, I'm gonna just run it on, listen to it, and this one not only that. This is why when I look into this Pashinyan world, how the Turks got this guy, I honestly don't know. Need lots of investigation. So I want you to see here, and then we'll come.
Բանակում ոչ մի դասալիկ չկար։ Հայկական բանակում վերջին տվյալներով եղել է ոչ թե 10,000, այլ 11,000 դասալիկ։
Իսկ իրականությունը այն է, որ մեր պատերազմի ընթացքում 44-օրյա պատերազմի ընթացքում մենք ունեցել ենք 11,000 դասալիկ։
Vardanyan is out of our territory.
Ermənistan terror devletidir.
Հայաստանի Հանրապետությունն ահաբեկչական կազմակերպություն եւ տիկնիկ է, իսկ անցյալ շաբաթ Հայաստանի բանակի վարչապետ Փաշինյանին հրաժարական տալու կոչը սպասվող վերջին։
Okay, so since you don't hear it, I don't know why. Aliyev, he gave order that Vardanyan be removed, and they did. So that's what he was saying. He said, I told them to remove this guy, so they removed him, right? And then Pashinyan's wife goes around, because Aliyev in the same video, it says Armenia had, 11,000 deserters. And next day, Pashinyan's wife goes, repeat that, And then this Turkish terrorist organization are saying, we should not let our success go for nothing, So they think Pashinyan is their success, So this is why I just want to, what do you think about this whole Turkish-Armenian things? Forget about Azerbaijan a minute.
Well, before I move on to Armenia-Turkey relations and this ongoing effort by the current Armenian government to normalize relations with Turkey, which, as far as I understand, it really doesn't matter what the Armenian side does or say. Turkey is constantly going to come up with excuses not to normalize relations with Armenia. If you remember a few weeks ago, a new statue of Operation Nemesis was erected in Yerevan, and Çavuşoğlu, the foreign minister of Turkey, condemned the placement of the statue and ordered the Armenian side to remove the statue. So it seems like for a long time, I think Armenians, not just this government, but all governments since the independence, were under the impression that as long as, they agree to normalizing relations with Turkey without any preconditions. If you remember, even in 2008, Sarkis started the diplomatic football or the protocols process at the time.
Football diplomacy.
Football diplomacy. At the end of the day, I think Turkey has a long way to come to terms with its historic past, which is that it's a state that was created in the aftermath of the collapse of the Young Turk government of the Ottoman Empire. And the reason why Turkey exists in the geographic location and in the composition that it has today is exactly because they perpetrated the Armenian genocide of 1.5 million Armenians. I think historically speaking, Armenians have often presented the Armenian genocide as simply Turks hating Armenians and therefore committing genocide. But the reality is, if you go more in depth into the history of the period, essentially the decay of the Ottoman Empire, several countries, including in the Balkans, breaking away from the Ottoman Empire. The reason why the Armenian genocide was implemented in the manner that they did, even through the spread of hate speech, which is similar to the vocabulary that gray wolves often use, was to secure a Turkish state at the cost of the Armenian genocide. So this, I mean, as I mentioned, many or every Armenian government has always said Armenian genocide recognition should not be a precondition to normalizing relations with Turkey. All four governments have done that, but all four governments so far have failed to normalize relations with Turkey because Turkey has specific geostrategic interests. It has the famous slogan or that they use, one nation, two states with Azerbaijan. They are heavily invested in essentially either committing a second genocide against the 120,000 Armenians of Artsakh or the complete ethnic cleansing of Artsakh. So until the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict is resolved in either genocide or ethnic cleansing, I think we won't ever come across to a point where Turkey and Armenia can normalize relations.
Actually, my next question was, can Armenians save Artsakh, or is it too late?
So I mean, I'm assuming you also, obviously everybody's following news. Several weeks ago, on May 14, if I'm not mistaken, Charles Michel, the president of the European Commission Parliament, mentioned that Armenia is going to recognize the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan with the 86,600 kilometer square territory, and Aliyev is going to recognize Republic of Armenia's territorial integrity of 29,800. The reality is, we need to establish one fact: the right of self-determination of the 120,000 Armenians of Artsakh stem from international law, from a wide array of declaration, treaties, the UN Charter, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Political Rights. So it's not really up to Ilham Aliyev or Nikol Pashinyan to decide whether or not the Armenians, the 120,000 Armenians of Artsakh, should retain the right of self-determination, because that right stems from international law, and not allowing the 120,000 Armenians of Artsakh to self-determine themselves extraterritorially, basically independence, is a verdict to allow Aliyev to commit a second genocide. Can Armenians do something? Of course, Armenians can do as well. I mean, there's nothing guaranteed, and we have to be very realistic in the sense that we are in an extremely difficult situation. But for example, in certain diaspora countries who are leading these quote-unquote negotiations between Armenia and Azerbaijan, especially in the United States and France, as you're aware, there was a meeting in Moldova earlier today. The Armenian diaspora in both France and the United States, and if also possible, Russia, essentially the three co-chairs of the OSCE Minsk group, which has not been functional since especially the Ukraine conflict started. Those diasporas have an obligation morally to keep pressuring their governments, in our case, the American government and the Biden administration, to change their policy, to not turn a blind eye towards the crimes of the Aliyev regime, which has since 2020 demonstrated that its only intention is to either commit genocide against Artsakh or to ethnically cleanse the entire territory of Artsakh of Armenians. So we need to struggle in every way possible, whether that's political activism, sending letters, protests in front of the White House, the State Department, the USAID building, similar protests in Paris, for example. We have to do something. Otherwise, we will witness the second Armenian genocide under our watch.
Yeah. And Armenians are depressed, and I don't know. I want to see, like, today apparently were some march in Glendale. I want to see how many people are there, but I haven't seen it yet. But even in Armenia, they cannot talk to each other. When I don't want to name, somebody was my show. I said, well, why don't you go just shake Kocharian's hand and say, let's fight this guy. Oh, he is worse than them. So they are like one will not talk to the other. There is some new organization. I don't know if you heard. I don't know if they're gonna do anything called Mayer Hayastan. I don't know how much you know about it. But every time there are those new organization and they just disappear, and so we don't know this. But honestly, we're all concerned. Every day I think about those men, women, children in there. I mean, when you put yourself in their shoes, like they don't know tomorrow morning what's gonna happen. They're looking at their kids like they have like 10-year-old or 5-year-old, and I mean, how do they sleep, those people? Honestly, I just don't know how do they even sleep, because you ANC have some representative in there now. What is they say? Because they go their home and talk to them. It's just very heartbreaking.
We speak to many people in Artsakh who are on the ground, who have been living under the blockade since December. We, a couple of weeks ago, had a meeting with the representative of the Artsakh government in Washington, D.C., Mr. Robert Avedisian, here in LA. The reality is, you mentioned, or you started this segment saying we're demoralized or people have lost hope. The fact of the matter is if you want motivation and to be inspired to continue the struggle, continue the fight, in fact, increase it, just look at what the people of Artsakh are doing. Yeah. Every day, as you mentioned, every second, nobody knows if they're going to be alive or dead. If their children are going to be shot by snipers from Azerbaijan, if Azerbaijan is going to invade into Stepanakert, Marduni, Mardagert, Askeran, and as we have witnessed over the last 2.5 years, again, since the signing of the trilateral statement of November 2020, Russia, unfortunately, has completely failed to fulfill its obligations under the based on the 9 points of the trilateral statement. So if Aliyev decides to invade Artsakh, we're not even sure if the Russian peacekeepers are going to stop them.
Yeah.
So the only thing that is stopping, Aliyev from attacking Artsakh is, I guess, the Artsakh Defense Army and possibly some political or diplomatic pressure from Russia and the international community. So, going back to your question of, are we demoralized? Have we lost hope? Well, if you've lost hope, then what are the people in Artsakh going to do? And if they haven't lost hope, then none of us in the United States of America or anywhere in the diaspora have the right to give up hope or to be demoralized.
What is your advice to Armenian people in diaspora?
My advice is, again, we also need to take the lead, but, if all the Armenian organizations, for example, in the United States can come together and organize a large march onto Washington, let's say, and maybe set up a camp around the White House for a week or two and blockade the White House in 30, 40, 50,000 Armenians. We have several million Armenians living in the United States. Maybe if we can get 30, 40,000 to set up a camp around and create a blockade around the White House, maybe the Biden administration will wake up and realize that the Armenian American community is united in their rejection of US's foreign policy towards Azerbaijan. As you're aware, President Biden, right after he recognized the Armenian genocide in 2021, he waived Section 907. So the US is providing military assistance to a genocidaire dictatorship government in Azerbaijan. US has not imposed any individual or sanctions against the Aliyev regime, which is a culprit. They have committed numerous violations of international humanitarian law. And the US has not introduced the UN Security Council resolution as a permanent member of the UN Security Council to create an internationally mandated peacekeeping force in addition to the Russians to ensure the security of the 120,000 Armenians of Artsakh. Because as you know, and everybody else who is following us knows, for over 2 years now, the Armenian government has relinquished its responsibility as the security guarantor of the people of Artsakh. So the only thing, again, stopping Aliyev from perpetrating genocide today is possibly the Russian peacekeepers and possibly some political pressure from the Western countries. But while they're pressuring, maybe, probably not enough. As you remember, in February, the International Court of Justice also ordered Azerbaijan to unblock the Lachin corridor. And instead of unblocking, this is the biggest court in the world, the International Court of Justice. Instead of unblocking the corridor and lifting the blockade over Artsakh, Azerbaijan actually installed a checkpoint on the corridor. So it's not that Aliyev is not listening to anything that the International Court of Justice says, that international community says. They're in fact escalating the situation, and they're moving closer and closer to ethnically cleansing or committing genocide against the Armenians of Artsakh.
Well, I think your idea of marching in Washington, and especially now is summer, people could take their time and organize. I mean, I don't know, like there is this Pan-Armenia, which your organization is part of it. They're totally silent. You don't hear anything from them.
The Pan-Armenian Council, ANC Western Region is a part of it. It's supposed to be an apolitical entity, but I'm sure, I'm not in all of their meetings personally. I know one of our representatives is. But I'm sure they're deliberating to see what can be done. But the reality is it's not just going to be the Pan-Armenian Council of Western United States. It has to come from all the Armenian organizations on the East Coast, West Coast, DC, and so on, working in cohesion and working together to organize a mass-scale rally. And I'm not saying in Los Angeles, because who's in Los
Angeles is useless.
Washington. There's no point in doing anything in LA or, I don't know, Boston. The target has to be Washington. The target has to be the White House and the State Department.
Yes.
Because those are the decision makers. Those are the people who have the power to do it. And every time I hear, what can America do? I just have to remind the world that America is the most powerful country in the world. If it wants to do something, especially against a small minnow country like Azerbaijan, they can do it.
Yeah.
Just whether or not there's the political will on the part of this administration to do anything to stop Aliyev.
But I think your idea, it could be organized simultaneously, not only United States, France, even in Armenia, possibly Russia, because Russia, there's lots of Azerbaijanis, so you never know what happened in there. But at least in France, in Europe, and in United States, maybe in Australia, and simultaneously somebody organized. And the problem is we don't have time. This Pashinyan is selling it as quick as he could. So this is why I need urgency. to organize these things.
I mean, yeah, Pashinyan is making a lot of mistakes, but we have to also realize one thing. The Azeris have learned from our mistakes too. Because let's face it, when we won the war in 1994, we stopped.
Yeah, that was a big mistake.
We stopped and we allowed Azerbaijan decades and decades of time to use its oil and gas resources to develop its military and spend 10 times the amount of money that Armenia had on its military complex, and did not force them to sign a permanent peace deal. That is exactly what Azerbaijan has been doing since the signing of the November 9, 2020 statement. You see, we had an opportunity between 1994 until at least 2007-8 to militarily win another war and force them to sign a peace deal. We did not do that. Azerbaijan recognized our mistake between that 10-year, 12-year window. And now they are, they're not only attacking Artsakh, they're, as I mentioned, invading and occupying the sovereign territories of Armenia to keep pressuring Armenia to give up as many things as it possibly can. Not only Artsakh, but maybe even, we keep hearing Aliyev mention Zangezur corridor. If the world allows Aliyev to do what it wants, it'll take over the entire country of Armenia too, not just Artsakh.
Yeah, I think that will happen if somehow this didn't stop and then Armenia, they can't remove this idiot because he's totally, all he does, he goes in there, sit with them, have a caviar and those things, like he never negotiated one single piece in this 2 year to advantage of Armenia. Even during the war when he signed, Azerbaijan was never in Karbachar and other places. He gave it to them. Here he said, you could have it. And so he just won his power. As long as he could hold on to power, that's what he's gonna do. But I think your idea of organizing Washington D.C. in Armenia, and if something start in diaspora, at least Armenian will sort of say, okay, this is not Kocharian, Sarkisian, or this and that. This is whole Armenian. Maybe they could come in the picture, rise up to. And so I think, but this is, only people could do this is organization like you guys, because you are very well organized. You guys always led Armenian cause. I know it's too much to ask, but then you...
It's not too much to ask, but unfortunately the point you mentioned about apathy or being disheartened or, I don't know, disengaged, we can probably take the lead and collaborate with all the other Armenian organizations, but ultimately to organize a rally, you need people to show up. And it's not just, I'm not talking about funding, I'm talking about people.
Yeah,
Are
body.
the people,
You need hot body.
Yeah, Armenian Americans, are they willing to just sit at home on their tablets, on their phones, chatting or putting a few statements on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, or maybe not even engaging at all, and witnessing a second genocide happen in Artsakh, or are they going to step up and do something about it? So ultimately, it all comes down to all of us as Armenian Americans to try to pressure the US government, especially the administration, to do something.
I got invited all those galas. I'm hoping some of those millionaires, could donate some money because, those transportation and stuff like that, so they could find places where people could fly. And of course, Eastern United States, they could drive or take a train, but in California, others, they have to fly. Maybe some people will like vacation, just take their car and drive there. But you need somebody to activate, like your idea is, I think, brilliant idea. And I like to see both in Washington, Paris, in Yerevan, And if they could do it in Russia, that would be even great. So Armenian get the energy. Yes, there are people are supporting us, and it's doable. But it's just like, this is a moment. This is a moment in history of Armenia. Either they do it or don't blame if Artsakh been slaughtered by Azerbaijan, and then you go say, oh, you see, Azerbaijan kill us. It's too late then. Now is the time.
No, you're absolutely right. If you remember, in September of 2022, we also organized the grassroots conference where at the time, Foreign Minister of Artsakh, David Babayan, was visiting here in LA. And essentially all of the meetings that we had organized for him and all of the public speaking opportunities, he kept saying, if you guys don't step up and help us, because they're willing to fight until the last second. Artsakh Armenians are willing to fight. If you guys, or if the diaspora doesn't step up and do something to help us, one day you're just going to sit there and, I don't know, sing songs about how the 120,000 Armenians of Artsakh were annihilated at the hands of Aliyev, the same way we have songs about the Armenian genocide and so on. So I completely agree with you. The time to act is not even now, but yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. It's very urgent. And I think, like me, I'll be online 24 hours a day, talking about this. I mean, happy to do, because honestly, as you said, this is yesterday, not today. And we have to do it, but we need body. You need a body.
I mean, this can't only be done as you mentioned, yes, ANC, a Western region, or ANC as a whole can, take the lead on it, or even, try to organize it. But the reality is all the Armenian institutions from across the United States have to come together, including churches, AGBU, assembly, everyone, because this is not an issue that only ANC works on, or only X or YZ organization. It's a national issue that everybody needs to step
up. All. You can't, one organization, I don't care how big you are, you can't do it. But it has to be all. And now, especially when Pashinyan said he's selling Artsakh to, and everybody knows this. It came right from his mouth. So it's not like people were before guessing he's going to sell it or he's this and that. Right now he did. And it's just a matter of maybe a next meeting he will sign. And so, I hope...
Again, I mean, on that point, Artsakh is not Pashinyan's to sell. Artsakh has no authority, legal authority. Neither Pashinyan nor Aliyev have legal authority over undermining the right of self-determination of Artsakh.
Yeah, but he's the leader.
He's the leader of Armenia. He's not the leader of Artsakh.
He's the one sitting with those idiots negotiating. Not me, not you. He's sitting in there. He's the one who's doing it. He's the one who signed the capitulation. He's the one give the Kalbachar, so he's doing it.
But he doesn't have, I mean, even if he signs anything, he doesn't have authority to sign away the right of self-determination of the people of Artsakh. That is enshrined in international law, and it is the obligation. And let's face it, I mean, once Armenia told the world that we are no longer the security guarantors of the people of Artsakh. In fact, if you remember, Nikol Pashinyan, right after he was elected in 2018 as prime minister, said, I'm not elected by the people of Artsakh, and I don't represent the people of Artsakh.
But you're making decisions.
So Artsakh is not his to give. He has no authority over Artsakh. It is the responsibility of the international community, including the United Nations, the United States, Russia, France. If you remember, in 2005, there was this UN summit that was held where a new responsibility to protect resolution was passed at the UN summit, 135 countries agreed that if a certain population is at risk of genocide or ethnic cleansing, then they have a collective responsibility to ensure that that population is protected. There's the UN Genocide Convention, which didn't exist in 1915, but it exists today. Countries are signatories to it. So it's really not only Armenia's responsibility to protect Artsakh, because let's face it, Armenia has relinquished that responsibility, unfortunately. But it is an international obligation to ensure that the 120,000 Armenians do not get massacred tomorrow or a few hours from now. So Nigol said, again, he has no authority to sign away Artsakh, none whatsoever. And it is the international communities, in this case, from our perspective as Armenian National Committee of America, the United States government, to step up and do something about it. Because, believe it or not, the United States of America is probably one of the few countries in the world that if it wants to force Aliyev to do something, then it can easily force Aliyev.
You remember, they went in there, destroyed 100 days, they bombed Serbia, created Kosovo. You know, if they want, they do it. Even northern Iraq, they created. The Kurds then created the United States. But yeah, if the United States, if you want to do it, they could do it. There is no question about it. But we need to get out there and organize, and hopefully enough Armenian will march on Washington, march on Paris, march in Russia, and that. But this message has to be spread around,
disseminated, and it has to be coordinated, as you mentioned. Like if it happens at the same time in Paris and Russia and the United States, which are the three key players, especially when it comes to the Nagorno-Karabakh Artsakh conflict, they're the three co-chairs of the OSCE. Then we need to have it coordinated, both within each country and all the Armenian organizations coming together to realize it, but then also with the 2-3 other countries.
Yeah, and also organizations like you should talk some of those who have deep pocket, maybe they could finance, because this is make it or break it situation right now. And so like if they would, some of them would give a couple of $100,000, it doesn't hurt them, And so because of transportation, where nobody's taking this money to use it for any purpose, just getting those bodies out there, And
believe me, I think we are discussing this as an option, and if it's something that is feasible to do, I don't think it's going to be finances that don't allow it to happen. So
well, I'm sure not everybody's could dish out $2,000 for airplane, because I'm
not talking about individuals. I'm saying like if it's possible to do this, and if it can be coordinated across all the organizations, then the donors will show up and give the money.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, let's see what you're gonna do. Now the burden is on you.
Well, thank you, Ali.
I have lots of faith on ANC, and I'm sure they could do it. But again, they can't alone do all these things. This has to be massive people marching on Washington, Paris, and probably Moscow. I don't know how, but because there is about 2 million.
Well, there's more than 2 million Armenians in Russia.
And I'm sure by diaspora doing this, it will energize Armenian in Armenia, because right now they are divided. But when they see from outside, they'll forget their division. Maybe they join in, and at the same time, maybe they could get rid of that idiot too. So, but you never know. Anyway, well, thank you very much. If you have, I'll just let you, closing thought. What do you want to say?
First of all, thank you for the invitation. As I mentioned, really, in the diaspora, or even in Armenia, we have no right to give up. We have no right to lose hope. When the 120,000 Armenians who have been in a blockade, post-war situation. In fact, the war is continuing every day. I think people have forgotten that in the perception and minds of Armenians in the diaspora, it was a 44-day war and that was the end of it. I remember vividly one specific instance from the 44-day war. The last Armenian who was alive in Hadrut was an 82-year-old man called Asaryan, who ended up being captured by two Azeri soldiers. One of them recorded as the other soldier beheaded Mr. Asaryan, the 82-year-old elderly, the last Armenian of Hadrut. So we have already witnessed since 2020, we don't even have to go back to the Sumgait massacres of 88, the Girovabad or the Baku pogroms, or even during the Armenian genocide to see what is about to happen in Artsakh. We've seen what happens when an Armenian comes under the authority of Azeri soldiers. It is beheading, it is massacre and murder. And the alternative is ethnic cleansing. So if you see that 120,000 Armenians in Artsakh are willing to struggle until the very last moment, none of us in the diaspora in the United States have the right to give up.
Yeah,
definitely. We need to unite and work towards pressuring the United States, France, and Russia to step up and stop this genocide and ethnic cleansing.
Totally agree. And I wish you all the best. Hopefully something could come out when we talk today.
We will struggle until the last minute, just like the Artsakh Armenians.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Stay there. Don't go.
Thank you.